Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Thought Leaders Live, where we talk with thought leaders in business, life, and all points in between. And I think our guest today, Marina Suholutsky, coach, speaker, and founder of Purpose Built, is someone who kind of spans the whole gamut there of business life and all points in between. Marina, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So we're going to talk about how consciousness and leadership intersect in business growth. And I'm really fascinated by this topic. We're hearing more and more, especially on LinkedIn and just in general, about consciousness. And so very excited. Marina's going to not only talk to us a little bit about how this impacts business leaders, but from an esoteric standpoint, might sound a little esoteric, but we're also going to get into some practical applications. And she's even going to walk us through a real life example using yours truly. So this is going to be kind of interesting. So, Marina, why don't you start out though with before we get to the fireworks, with talking a little bit about your personal journey and more about Purpose Built and what you're doing.
Sure. So thank you for agreeing to play, by the way, Greg. It's going to be fun. So I hope
Okay.
people stick around for that. So a little bit about me, just a super quick background. So Purpose Built is the name of the business. Purpose is all of the inner game, all of the consciousness, all this sort of the things that we don't see, which I'll talk a little bit more about. And built is all the execution. It's all the impact you want to make, the creation, the actual execution in the business. So built comes from my New York days. I spent 12 years in corporate America. I ran P&Ls by the time I was 26 years old. My last gig was at IBM, where we were actually 2 years in. So I started at IBM 2014. 2016, I was leading an LLM team, an early LLM team. And we were creating chatbots for IBM.com.
Wow.
So the part of my business that is, hey, how do you put something in market? How do you actually scale it? That's my background. The inner game is my own personal journey, right? So that's where the purpose piece comes from. You know, one of the things that I always talk about is how do we remember the parts of ourselves that we kind of held on to as children, right? When you say purpose, like, why am I here? You know, and I've been very lucky in my life to not forget this place of, hey, what if anything is possible? What if, when we talk about how good could it get, which I'm sure you'll ask about in a second, to me, how good could it get is this place of childlike curiosity and wonder that kind of gets lost as we enter the business world and as life happens. And so it's an invitation to hold on to that. And that's been a lot of my personal journey, is remembering what I forgot.
Wow, that's really fascinating. I mean, what kind of, you're working in New York and you're in the midst of this corporate world, and how did this kind of awakening come about? How did you suddenly think about those
Yeah.
childlike dreams and
Yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah. I joke that I've been in the business of consciousness on both sides for 15 years now. It's a very personal story. I'm happy to share it. I was in a relationship that I was in for a long time. We were going to get engaged, and I had this spiritual moment, for lack of a better word. I've had a few of these spiritual experiences, some younger and some this one more in my late 20s, where I just realized, hey, I'm not being honest with myself. And this is a person I loved. He has a daughter. We're still very much in each other's worlds, but it was a very real moment where I just we bought a ring, and I just got this immediate download that said, hey, you can't have children with this person. And it
Right.
was horrifying because I loved him and he's a beautiful human being and I have nothing bad to say still to this day. But these moments that kind of wake us up to something that's something more, something that's not physical, something that's not tangible, right? Like something that I just had to listen to. And we have these moments a lot as children, right? We there's no separation between what's possible when we're kids, right? We
Right.
just put borders around these things and boxes around these things, and we listen less and less. And so a lot of my personal journey has been, hey, how about not waiting for the big hit over the head where you have to rip the third dermal layer off your life and kind of start over? What if you get to listen day to day a little bit more um, proactively and a little bit more consciously so that you can be an active participant in your life? You don't have to wait for the big knock over the head kind of,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about that then. And thanks for sharing that. I mean, yeah,
Yeah, of
that's
course.
a personal story, and I'm glad things worked out for the best for you. Um, let's talk a little bit about that because I think all of us, we might be saying, yeah, that's great, Marina, but you know what? I got to sell widgets here, and I've got a whole team to lead, and
Of course.
let's talk a little bit just about how the leader's level of consciousness impacts the growth and the decision making and the
Yeah.
scaling.
Yeah. So it's been interesting to start talking about consciousness. It's a word that some people have heard, some people don't know about. For those who might be aware of Michael Pollan, he just came out with a book on consciousness. It's
Yeah.
called A World Appears. Okay. And so the simplest way to think about consciousness is what happens when you open your eyes. When the world appears when your eyes are open, right? From going from closed to open. And so it's very much a very simple exercise that can happen every single day. What am I opening my eyes to?
Hmm.
What am I aware of? And so it's very practical. You'll see that in the second half of the exercise or the second half of the conversation. It's very practical to ask, what am I aware of? What am I conscious to? Right? What do you know on your team, and what might you not know on your team because you're not asking the question or because you're not looking? You might be afraid to look, or you might know it's there, right? You might be avoiding it, and so you look away. And so it's a very simple exercise to say, hey, what am I paying attention to? What am I aware of? And what can I become more aware of so that I'm a better leader, better practitioner, whatever it might be.
Yeah, and we were talking before the show, and I asked you if I could mention this. I read Elizabeth
Mhm.
Strout's book, "The Things We Never Say," which I really recommend. It's a great book, and it's fiction. And she was talking about unconsciousness came up, and the idea that these are emotions that you have that you're not even sure why they're happening, but they
Yes.
happen and they affect you. And so I think that a lot of leaders unconsciously are doing things that are negatively impacting what they're doing.
Yes.
And I guess I would say, how do you help bring that? How do you
Mhm.
improve that level of consciousness? What do you do to
Yeah.
make people aware of what they're doing?
So we'll talk about resistance in a little bit, but
Okay.
we ask the question around mind, body, heart, and soul. What
Okay.
am I aware of cognitively in my adult mind, if you will? What are the
Mhm.
stories I'm telling myself? What do I know, right? Heart is much more about what do I feel. A lot any entrepreneur who tells you they're not emotional is missing it, and we might want to start there, right? So my one of my favorite things is to like identify what you think is logical and then actually realize that it's a feeling,
Yeah.
right? So what am I feeling? What doubts do I have? What concerns, what comparisons might I be finding myself in, right, that make me feel a little less than? We identify those things so you can be much more specific in your questions to bring the unconscious conscious. And the same
Okay.
is true for the body. We can get into it in a little bit, but
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
you can ask targeted questions to say, hey, what are you not seeing?
Yeah. Right. Right. Um, let's talk a little bit about, okay, before we get into what's the benefit of that, but talk a little bit to me about capacity And,
Mhm.
one of the bullet points we got for the show description, how much complexity and a pressure a leader can effectively hold. And why are we talking about capacity, Marina?
So let me zoom out actually a little bit and I'll answer the question this way. So when you think about being a leader, there are a few questions that kind of circle each other. One is, what kind of leader do I need to be? Who do I need to show up as in the day to day? So that's your identity structure, your belief architecture, right? What kind of human am I, and how am I showing up in the leadership context, right? The second is, what do I want to build, right? So that's the, how do I scale my business? How do I make an impact? How do I leave a mark, legacy, these kinds of things? And the thing in between those is, can I hold all of it? Do I actually have the capacity, the capability, the the physical environment, the emotional environment to be able to actually not just set the goal, but to sustain the goal, to sustain the momentum, right? Because if we don't have the capacity, we're actually not showing up in our best light. We're not the best version of ourselves, and we're not making the most strategic, well thought out, foresight driven decisions, right? We're sort of at 30% instead of 60%, or at 10% versus 50%. And most of the time, we don't ask ourselves those questions. Where am I at? And how do I actually know what my limits are? We tend to overthink and overestimate our limits most of the time. It's like saying we're going to do 10 things on our to-do list, but we actually get to 3. The same
Yeah.
is true for our capacity as a leader until we consciously and proactively build it.
Wow, that I'm glad you brought that up about the to-do list, because when you're talking about capacity, and probably like a lot of people, immediately I'm like, you mean how much stuff I can do? You're talking
Mhm.
about something a little bit different here,
Yeah.
though. And
What can you hold?
can you give
How much
me
of this can you hold?
yeah, can you give me a tangible example of somebody you've worked with maybe, and how you've helped them become aware of what they could hold and what they couldn't?
I'm just thinking of a good one to. Okay, so I have an interior design client. We've worked together for 4 years, and we've done everything from her brand position to her messages online, and these kinds of things. And she decided that she wanted to launch a product, like a physical product. So think of Magnolia Home or something, like, for
Okay.
products that are sold for the sake of an experience at home. Her capacity was multi-layered. Number one, she did not have the actual physical systems. Okay. 3-person team, stuff still on paper. This is a tangible example of capacity, right? So we updated a lot of their systems. We got them on an interior design software, these kinds of things.
Okay.
With capacity, we also talk about where AI belongs, which is a little bit of a separate conversation. But how do you actually offload the the nuts and bolts that the client doesn't really want to do, or the leader doesn't really want to handle, that we can actually now automate in a very effective, sustainable way? That's, again, system level capacity, business level capacity. And then there's identity level capacity and the ability to actually hold all of this, which is, hey, I'm about to be way more front facing as a leader, right? My name's going to be on this thing and I'm going to have to spokesperson it, right? And that comes with imposter syndrome. That comes with, I don't even know if I have the time for all these interviews. These kinds of more, let's call them esoteric or more intangible questions. And then it becomes an identity level evolution to say, hey, I'm expanding as a leader. I'm expanding in terms of how I'm going to show up in the business, right? And what do I need to work through to be able to do that effectively? Because without a personal brand, launching a product right now is, in that space, not really advisable.
And I like what you said there about work through, because I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, is, you set this journey up to address capacity. Maybe I'm sure not everybody is like, yep, I've got all the intangible capacity I need, Marina. Let's go. It's like you're probably I'm
Yes.
guessing you help them figure out what they need to build in and how you
Yes.
transition in there to have that capacity.
Yes. And a lot of that is, we'll talk about in velocity, because
Okay.
there's inspiration, there's how fast you can physically go, there's understanding how on mission you can stay. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of founders are quick starts. If you've ever done Colby, right? So they have 1,000 ideas. Like, can we stay aligned? These are all parts of how we address these things, because you might have all the capacity and inspiration in the world, but not actually be able to stay on track. Right? This is also something that happens. Some people have that, and some people have the opposite. I've got kids and responsibilities and things, and I really want to set these goals, but I don't actually know if I have the energy for it.
I'm going to guess you run into capacity problems like with virtually every client. and I, is that
It's a recurring business model,
yeah.
being human.
Yeah. And I bet most people probably aren't aware of it in the way that you're defining it, which I really like, is both a tangible business thing that they can understand, but also that intangible, which is probably very different for a lot of people and maybe surprises them.
Yeah.
Uh,
Purpose and built. We do it all the time. It's sort of, it's like one hand and the other hand, and they, two things are happening concurrently. The
yeah,
capacity of the leader impacts the growth of the business, and the growth
uh,
of the business and the shifts in the business affect who you have to show up as a leader.
yeah,
They go hand in
yeah.
hand.
The yin and the yang. Um, let's. Is this a good time to switch over to
Yeah,
the
sure.
assessment? Is this a logical segue? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's bring this up on stage here, and you should be able to see the screen. So,
Okay.
why don't you go ahead and walk us through this, Marina?
Okay, so let's see if I can make this a little bigger so people can see it. If somebody can let me know in the chat if this is working,
Yeah,
people can see it. Okay,
yeah,
so I think hopefully at this point, people are seeing a theme. We think very high level, we think broadly, and then we make it practical. So momentum is how we make it practical. We're basically diagnosing everything you and I just talked about, right? Who am I? How do I show up? All these things, they show up here. How much capacity I have all shows up here. So when you think about momentum, if you open a physics textbook, right? Momentum in the basic physics, which I failed in high school, by the way, definition is mass times velocity. Okay. How much can you put? How much inertia can you put? How much inertia can you get through? What is your physical mass? And how fast are you going and in what direction? Okay. Mass times velocity. Make sense?
yes,
Okay. What we've done is we've added the very realistic component of being human. When we are living our lives, when we're setting our goals, we hit up with life, right? We have friction in life. We have resistance that comes at us, right? That can be life coming at us, or internally we have our own resistance.
yeah,
And so what we've done at Purposeful is we've defined these variables. We've added resistance. You need to take resistance away to make sure you can maintain your velocity and your momentum. And we've also defined them through the lens of human behavior. So for each one of these, and we'll just go through them once you set a goal, you'll see how we define them and we break them down behaviorally so that you can come out of this and say, hey, this is what I need to action. Here's what's actually slowing me down or tripping me up. Okay.
sure, sure.
So let's start with your goal. And I know you and I talked about this offline a little bit. So it doesn't have to be you don't have to solve, world peace in this moment, but a very tangible goal that we can then ask these questions around. I don't know if you
Yeah.
have one, you thought of
I,
one.
and I think I've talked to you about this, Marina. I've got a digital marketing agency, and I love my core group of clients, and they've been with me for forever. But as I'm nearing retirement, my goal is to, hopefully nearing retirement, is to also begin ghostwriting books for people. So that would be my goal, is to try and get 1 to 2 books per year that I'm ghostwriting.
So that's a very, very sort of tangible.
Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, it's perfect.
Okay.
And I know I'm bouncing between. Okay, I'm just checking to see if people can see the screen. All right, cool.
Yep.
So mass. We define mass as three things in the behavioral sense. It's what you carry into the work, it's what you bring into the work, right?
Okay.
Who you know, what you know, and how well you can apply what you know. So let's think about network. Obviously, this show, obviously, a lot of what you do on LinkedIn is growing your network. How effective or how sort of aligned would you say your network is towards the goal of finding 1 to 2 clients to ghostwrite a
I
book
would,
around?
yeah, I guess if I would give it a number, because I haven't quite found who is the ideal person
Mhm.
for the ghostwriting. Um, Maybe be it a founder or someone retiring who wants to tell their life story or memoir. So
Yeah,
um, I would say there's volume in my network, but in terms of having built a really solid one that I could just, uh, flip the switch, I'd say it's maybe about a 6.
cool. And do you have, and I know you've asked me a flavor of this before, just so it's ironic for me to ask you this, but do you have um, the super who's in the room? So the people identified who can help you find that network. Super who's comes from the science of scaling. It's a Ben Hardy quote or a Ben Hardy term. But super who's are basically people who can make the right connections happen quickly. Do you feel like you have those people?
I'm not sure about that. That's a good question. That's a really good question.
Yeah,
I'm going to take
it's not
that
my
one.
question. That
You can
Ben
take
Hardy
full
gets
credit for it.
it. Yeah.
uh, that's my MO. I just take other people's great marketing ideas and repackage them as windbound. No, I would say it's about a 3.
Okay. So what would quickly get you beyond your 6? Because that's part of what's, I think, very likely affecting your 6. So if you had 3 people, mentors, whoever you want to call them, um, people who have done it, and you could just say, hey, um, I'm trying to build this network. Uh, who do you know and how do I get connected into it?
Mm,
That would help you move that network piece up.
yeah,
It's part of why it's at a 6.
yeah,
It sounds like there's
yeah.
probably, but okay. Do you know how to ghostwrite? Do you have the methodology in place? Do you have the nuts and bolts of the offering? From a knowledge perspective, you and I have talked, so I think that one's higher, but I'm curious where you would rate it.
I would give it about I would say an 8. So
Yeah.
yeah, I've written professionally, long form blog. I've ghost written 2 books, and I'm finishing up my own memoir. So yeah,
Okay.
that's the highest rated one. Otherwise, I wouldn't be even thinking about
Sure.
this.
Yeah. And the application of the knowledge. So let's say you meet your 3 super who's, you've got the methodology, you've started proving it out, which is I know you have. Do you feel like you can apply everything when it's ready to go? Do you have the skills, the
Yeah,
actual nuts and bolts skills? Yeah.
yeah,
What do you call that? 8, 9,
yeah.
10?
I'd give it. I'm a tough critic, so I'm going to give myself an 8 on that.
8. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, 8.
Cool. So your current mass is a 7.3. So that's how we diagnose these things, right? It's a pretty logical set of questions. Um, let's talk velocity. This one will be interesting for you. So how fast are you going? Most people, when they think of velocity, they think, how fast am I going? Right? Like, am I moving? Am I doing things every day? Am I checking things off the to-do list? The actual speed of the train, if you will. How
Yeah,
fast is your train moving, or are you stalled out?
I'd say it's at a nice steady hum because, like I said, I Windbound is my business, and I love working with my clients. I love that side of the business. But this is in the background and something I'm building. So it's, I guess, it's consistent, it's active, um, but it's not like full time freaking out, you know, burning
Yeah,
the
like
midnight oil. It's got its
yeah.
place. I'd say it's like
Okay.
10 to 20% continuous hum in the background.
Okay. So would you put that at like a 5 or a 6, somewhere in the middle?
If you
Because it's
think
not
that,
moving at a, you know, super, super, super fast. So where would you put that? 7, 6,
it put about a 5,
5. Okay.
if that sounds right to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. I think the thing that I'm hearing, and we'll talk about it more, is you've put that into its own compartment, if you
Yep.
will. And so we'll talk about alignment in a second, right? So is your energy in service of what matters the most, right? Because this is where people, you can be moving super fast in the wrong direction. It sounds like you have found the right spot for this goal, right? And so you're um, recognizing that it's not the thing that's most in alignment towards whatever your overall drivers are. We talk about drivers in a different conversation, but there's probably something else that's driving you, maybe getting towards retirement. You know,
Right.
like there are other things that are also at play here. So when you think of your alignment around this goal, right, you've put it in kind of its box. Do you have energy moving in service of that? Or are you moving, is there a lot of other noise happening for you? Maybe there's clients, maybe there's family, maybe there's this, maybe, you know, a lot of people have so many buckets that we tend to not always act in alignment.
I think it's in a very healthy place,
It's awesome.
and um, the energy is, I think, at a nicely allocated on all fronts between
Cool.
personal, core business, and then this kind of aspirational.
So it sounds like this is high for you. Where would you put
Yeah, I give it an 8. I love
it?
I love those
I'm
snowmen.
curious about why we won't have any nines or tens, but we can play that game later. Okay. Um, so potential energy and kinetic energy. So this is where we start talking about, we bring some of the esoteric components into a little bit more of a practical conversation. So potential and kinetic energy, another, you know, core term in the business. I'm also mindful of time. So tell me if we need to speed things up or not. What do you want to
Yeah,
do?
I'd say we've got about
Okay.
5 minutes.
So let's move a little bit more quickly. So potential energy is your curiosity about this idea, right? Are you leaning into it or are you leaning out of it, right? So sometimes you might pull back, sometimes you might lean in. Kinetic energy is actual action and output towards the goal.
Yeah.
So where would you, does the distinction make sense?
Yep. I would say I'd give this one a 7.
Okay. So potential is a 7 and kinetic also a 7.
Sure.
Compounding. Okay. So let me move through this as diligently as I can. So this
Yeah.
resistance is where all the gold is. Okay. You
Yeah.
answered some of this a little bit earlier. I'm going to go through and define them. Cognitive is all of the distractions that come from the thought loops, second guessing, the noise in our minds. Emotional is fear, doubt. Sometimes we get so stuck in the emotional spin of things that we get really overwhelmed. You know, you hear a lot of entrepreneurs say they're overwhelmed. Somatic is fatigue. It's the part of our founder being that is actually remembering that we have fingers and toes, right? Burnout comes in here, how regulated our nervous system is. And then relational is where in our community structures do we have support? How supported do we feel? Do we feel judged? Do we feel like we trust our community to show up in these ways, etc.? So I don't know if you can do this quickly or not, but
Yeah, I'd say cognitive, I would say 3.
okay.
So
So
I
not a lot
pretty
of noise.
no.
Great.
Fear, doubt, overwhelm. I'd say I'm going to give myself a 5 on that.
So 5 out of 25. So low,
Oh no, the other way. Say 20.
20. And is this, so this is correct, or you're not consumed by a lot of noise?
I'm not consumed by a lot of noise, but the little bit of noise is keeping
Is
me from
is
going to
yeah, which is
25.
which happens all the time. Yep.
Okay.
How
Uh,
tired are you? How energized are you
I feel
somatically?
pretty energized. Yeah, I'd say I'm feel healthy and mentally good and in a good spot. So I'm gonna give
Cool.
myself give
And then
myself yeah, that's fine.
Oh, sorry. I can't
Two.
see you. Okay. And then how about relationships, supported, general state of trust and
I'm such a lucky guy, Marina. I get so many good people around me. Yeah.
yeah.
So
So let's put
that's
that
one.
one. Oh, cool. We got an absolute.
Yeah.
So your current resistance is actually fairly low, but the emotional piece is hanging on, right? So then you can just go down here and just so your momentum is in the positive, which is very, very good. Most of the time we see neutral to negative. So
Okay.
what you said, which is it's kind of going at a clip, is reflected here pretty accurately. The biggest piece I would share with you, and just in the interest of time, is it sounds like the network is actually where you're going to make the most progress. By
Yeah. Yeah. This is incredibly valuable, Marina, because I think once you slow me down and go through those specific steps there, um, there's so much that goes into every business decision we make, and by just slowing me down and going through that probably was an unconscious thing
Exactly.
that I was actively engaging in the network, but like, how do I get that right network? And why don't I
Yeah.
have that considering how active I am? That really opened my eyes there. So I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Thanks for playing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. Um, I'm just going to show we got a comment here from Mike Sweeney, who was on the show a couple weeks ago and a great executive coach as well. Capacity and emotions relate. Sometimes we have low do capacity when B stuff is heavy. Get a sick. Conversely, big win can lead to more do capacity. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, a little shout out from Mike there. So, great. So, let's just wrap it up here, Marina. So that was a great example of walking me through that and really helping people understand, is it the purpose, is it the built, what is all involved. Appreciate you sharing that. Appreciate you coming on the show. If somebody wants to work with you and run through the
Yeah.
momentum calculation with you as well, how do they get a hold of you?
Send me a message on LinkedIn. We're in the right channel for that.
Yep.
You can always go on purposebuilt.com. So that this momentum diagnostic is free. It's open. You just go to momentum.purposebuilt.io. You can run yourself through it. It's meant to be done in 15, 20 minutes. And if you send me a message, or obviously purposebuilt.com/contact.
Okay. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marina. And thank you, everyone, for joining us on another edition of Thought Leaders Live.